Down the Hobby Hole, a weekly podcast about hobbies, interests, and hyperfixations. Sometimes our own and sometimes discovering new ones. I'm your host. That's the Grand Wizard.
Yeah, I was like, what is this name you're about to introduce yourself with? Because it's certainly not Rustage.
I am your host, Daniel Rustage, musician, dungeon master, card game designer, man of many hobbies and interests, and I'm also joined by my co-host, the best friend, Shwabadi.
Hello there. What are we talking about this week this weekly podcast?
I am dressed in my tunic. I am ready to talk about my first ever LARPing experience. That would be the title.
Yeah. My first ever LARPing experience.
Was at North America's biggest LARP.
Yeah, crazy.
Hello, everyone.
It's something I've been very curious about for a long time, and I was like, I don't know if I want to take the dive for it. I don't know if it sounds like it'll actually be a good time for me. But you did it, and now it's the only thing I want to do because it sounds incredible. Let's talk about it.
Okay, well, let's explain what it is for people who don't know. LARPing, it stands for live action role play. Sort of, if you know, role playing is like Dungeons & Dragons, but instead of playing a character in a tabletop game or a video game, you're playing a character in the real life, and it's you. And there's lots of different variants of it all throughout the world, and like different like levels of intensity, I guess. But the base idea is that you are in character in a sort of fictional world, be it like fantasy, medieval, or whatever, and you are oftentimes fighting, and the fighting will have its own rules, and then also oftentimes like interacting politically in this world, right? I can only talk from experience of the LARP I did, which is Bicolline. So, if you don't know what Bicolline is this 5,000 plus people LARP in Quebec, Canada, and I will tell you, absolutely incredible. So I was there for a week, and and they have like events that like, it's a place that exists, right? It doesn't like disappear when you leave, but it's a place that exists, and they do events like a few times throughout the year. And I did this thing called the Grand Bataille. So it's a week-long event of stuff, but it culminates in a big battle at the end. And I was there for an entire week. And for that entire week, you are not only in character, but you are sleeping like a medieval. So we're camping in medieval tents. We do not have any technology. There's even like inside your tent, you can use your phone or whatever. But even if you have that luxury, there is no fucking signal or Wi-Fi at all. So you're just like isolated from the universe, from the world. Everything, it's full decorum. So everything everybody is wearing is fully fantasy medieval clothing. It's everything looks like it is, at least, right? Some people might have modern shoes on, but they've made them look like fantasy decorum. And like everything's mostly candlelight. Maybe someone might have electricity, but it's to power something that looks like it's a candle, if you know what I mean, right?
Right.
It's all in decorum, so it's all total immersion the whole time. It is, as I said before, 5,000 plus people, and genuinely, it's this huge fantasy medieval town where there are actual giant wooden buildings like taverns and houses and stuff like that. And most of these buildings are owned by people in the game, the quote-unquote game, in the LARP, that they have earned the space and the resources to be able to build these buildings, real buildings, through the things that they've done in game. This Bicolline has been going on for 20 plus years at this point, and so there's just these like annals of history that you just see all around you. And how it works is there are people often are a part of a guild, and the guild will have their own guild base, their guild building, their guild tent to camp, etc. And these guilds are part of kingdoms, and then the kingdoms fight each other or they hate each other. And everything is super insular in terms of like the currency, and there's like an in-game currency, there's an in-game like stock market with resources that they represent with cards. It's genuinely so like it only works because everybody is so into it, and they're so engaged with it, and they care about it, and it's real to them. And when you're there, it's real to you too.
Yeah.
So firstly, I think it's important to talk about the combat and the battles and the stuff like that, because a lot of people go into these sort of things, they want to fight, and they want to be a medieval knight. And how the combat works is the guilds are part of empires, are part of kingdoms that are part of whatever, and there's like a virtual game that's being played that all the guild leaders and all the stuff are playing. And whenever a battle happens in that virtual world, that is represented by a battle that happens in the real world, and the outcome of that battle affects the outcome of the battle in the virtual world, if that makes sense. And so that's like the greater political sphere.
Yeah.
And and these guild leaders can spend resources and money to give themselves more, troops or like monsters or like artillery units that they can use in the real life battle. And so when you're part of a guild, you get put onto the battlefield and you have a side that you are a part of. You know who your enemies are. And I'll explain how the combat works. It's actually really simple. If you get hit in the head or the chest with a weapon, the weapons are all foam. But if you get hit in the head or the chest, you die. If you get hit in the arms, you lose use of the arms. If you get hit in the legs, you lose use of the legs. You have to go down to your knees. If you're wearing armor, leather armor, you get to be hit an additional time before those effects come into play. And if you're wearing like steel armor, metal armor, you get to be hit 2 additional times before those effects come into play. And that is it. That's it. Really simple rules and everything.
But it's largely off sort of like a trust system
in a way, but like because everybody cares so much and because there's so many people, like it's so obvious when somebody doesn't, and they will, and there are game masters that are like making sure everything's running smoothly as well. If they see someone blatantly breaking the rules, you get banned from combat, full stop. And it's very clear when you hit someone in the chest and they don't die. You're there with like 7 other people. It's like, bro, you just got fucking killed.
Did you have any issues with combat?
Not personally, in terms of like people cheating. No, I didn't experience it whatsoever. The only cheating I saw was accidental.
I see. Just because of the nature of, like you said, there's so many people there, they care about it so much, it's so immersive. I just feel like almost nobody would want to cheat.
No, 100%.
Because it would take themselves out of it.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I died a lot.
Yeah.
I died a lot. No, the only time I saw somebody cheat was like, when you're dead, you have to hold your weapon upside down and you walk back to the respawn point if there is one, or just out of battle if there isn't. And it's also against the rules to fake death by doing that. And there was a mission where we had to raid a caravan full of loot bags. And once we killed all the people around it, you then grab a loot bag and you run. And some guy grabbed the loot bag in one hand, and in the other hand, they were holding their weapon upside down. And as they were running away, the game master said, "You are feigning death. You have to drop the loot bag." And they were like, "You're right, actually. My bad." So then that's the only time I've seen any issue like that. Otherwise, genuinely, it was just like, they're really on it. And it is genuinely intense when you're in there. So I went with a group called True Voyage North. And True Voyage North are sort of like that, like when you book like a holiday package with somebody, right? Yeah. And they sort out the hotel and the flight and the whatever. True Voyage North is sort of the equivalent of that for this LARPing experience, especially if you're English speaking, because it's in Quebec and they mostly just speak French there. so and you don't get provided a tent or anything like that if you just go if you just buy a ticket to the event and you rock up, you're just there. Where are you sleeping? You're gonna have to figure it out. You have to bring your own tent. You have to bring your own stuff. You have to make sure you in an area where you're allowed to set up your tent. It's all very complicated. But what True Voyage North do is that you pay them, and they have their own guilds that you can join, and they will have tents that you can sleep in those guilds. They will be able to, they pick you up at the airport and in a big coach, and they ship everybody off there. And they sort of handle all the logistics of it. It's really good, I think, for first timers. I know that a lot of people who go with True Voyage North for their first time and they learn everything, they don't go with them for their second time. The second time, they're just like, all right, I'm going to do something else. I found this other guild I want to join, and stuff like that. And so I did it with them, and I joined a guild called Militum, which the reason I joined Militum is because I wanted to go in and be like, I want to roleplay a pathetic little soldier boy, just a little guy. My character's name was Weasel. I just wanted to be a guy with a spear, and I just wanted people to tell me what to do, and I would fight because it's my first time, and I think it's fun to roleplay as a bootlicker.
Yeah.
And it really didn't go like that for me at all. So first day, we get acclimatized to the guilds and stuff, and at 8 p.m. I think they fire off a cannon, and it means from that point everyone's in character, in decorum, and so everyone gets ready. And in the first combat, I think is like on the Tuesday, you have to do some training if you haven't fought before. The first combat, we're all in line, we're all in the group. Everybody's like in armor, it's incredible. There's like, genuinely, like people have roles. We had like a captain of the pike, and the general of Militum was the only other British guy there, and he was really cool. And the marshal is like, in real life, he's a Navy captain. Like, so he's like got actual military experience. Yeah. And he's bringing that into this world. And so we're in like an actual fortification line. We've got shield wall, we've got spears, we've got swords around the edges. And I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. We're going up against these veterans, we're fighting, we're doing well. And at one point, like, our ranks are broken, a whole bunch of us die, but I survive, and I'm just in the woods, like by myself, as our forces have scattered. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do, what's going on, the general's dead. Then, all of a sudden, coming out of the trees, this lumbering tree monster came forwards, and it's obviously some guy in a suit, but he's like on stilts. It's very well done. He's like 9 foot tall, huge creature. And the way that monsters work is if they hit you anywhere, you die, no matter the armor. It doesn't even matter if it's on a shield or a weapon. It doesn't matter if it's on like a fucking spear and they hit the tip of your spear, you're dead, because they're so powerful. The idea is it would knock you back and you die. And they have like 20 HP or something. They have to be hit like 20 times before they die. And he's coming through, and he's just doing this. He's waving his hands about, fucking decimating hordes of men. It's
like the flashback scene from the Lord of the Rings with Sauron just fucking
murdering
people out the way.
But I come out of the forest with my spear in hand behind him. I managed to flank around him, and I, with my spear, stab him about 8 or 9 times in his lower thigh and back. And with my final stab, he collapses to the ground in a big, "Whoa!" And he dies. And everybody like cheers, and they point over. They're like, "Weasel, you killed him!" And I'm like standing there with my spear, like, "Oh, yeah, I guess so." And then from that point onwards, I was no longer Weasel the foot soldier. I was Weasel the monster slayer, because my guild general, he's a great guy. He's incredible at sword fighting. He's very charismatic, but he loves embellishing the truth. So when he told everybody about it, he kept saying that I fought the tree monster one-on-one and won. like we were in a sort of duel situation where it was just me versus him, and I killed him. Which is not the case, but that's what everybody now thought about me. So then they gave me the role of, they put me in a monster hunter division. That meant from that day onwards, in all of the battles, my whole thing was to go off the beaten path and just hunt monsters. Like it was The Witcher. And it was me and this dude called Cohen, I think in character named Cohen, and I felt so out of place, because Cohen's like, he's like ripped, he's like 6 feet, he looks like he knows what he's doing, and I'm just me. And he's like, yeah dude, we're the monster hunting division. I'm like, bro. I'm Weasel.
I want to watch this series. I want to watch this TV show.
So that's what happened to me in combat, and I'm sorry for yapping so much, but the second great thing throughout the week that happened to me was, I think on like the Monday or the Tuesday, when walking through the town, I found this building that was called like the Grand Archives. And you go inside, and it's like all these historical documents from Bicolline and stuff. It's like this great library, and this like old man stops us at the door, and he's like, "If you want entrance to the library, you must get a card of knowledge," in a French accent because he's French. And I'm like, how do you get a card of knowledge? He's like, "Well, there's various ways to get a card of knowledge, but one way you can do so is by donating a historical document yourself to the library." And I'm like, "Oh, this sounds like a good idea." The guild that I'm a part of, Militum, to my knowledge, has only been around, this is its second year. That's like really fresh. I was like, I could do like a fun history of Militum. They probably don't have anything in here yet. So, I'm going to go do that. So I go to my guild general and like, hey, I have this idea. I want to do a history of Militum. And at this point, I had already done it. The cat was out of the bag that I did rapping as like my job, right? Because I did the bard competition where I rapped and I won a thing there, right? And the guild general says I won the whole bard competition. I just won a prize, but he's like, "Oh yeah, that would be a really good idea, and you should also make it rhyme." I'm like, "Okay, I will." And he's like, "So you should interview all of the higher ups of Militum to be able to pen this historical document." And so I start by interviewing him, and he's very much in character, charismatic. He's telling these stories. He's like, I find out that Militum used to be a part of a bigger guild, and it was like a branch of it, and that bigger guild betrayed the kingdom they were a part of and defected, but the branch, which was Militum, didn't want to defect, so they stayed loyal to the kingdom and became their own separate guild. And I was like, "What? I didn't know this. This is already like, holy shit, there's intrigue here." And he's like, "Yeah, and there was this shadow council," and he's saying all this. It's very grandiose. And I was like, "Okay, cool. I'm going to talk to the guild marshal, and he's so much more pragmatic." And he's like, "Yeah, there was this guy in the guild who was embezzling money." I was like, "What?" In-game currency, and also doing some weird scammy stuff with out-of-game money as well. He's like, he's embezzling money, and it caused a lot of tensions, and then he's getting way more into the lore and the story. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so interesting. And I'm like, well, this seems very biased. Militum seem like the good guys, they stayed loyal. I have to talk to other guild leaders. So I go to some of the neighboring guild leaders who would also have been like privy to this information, and they all say very similar things. Yeah, there was this guy who was embezzling money. He made a weird sex cult, and he did all this, and I'm like, what's going on here? And then it was like the fifth person I talked to, I got a name.
Wow.
And they were like, he was like, "Oh yeah, this guy, Peter." And I'd not say his full name, but it was like, "This guy, Peter, he did all this." And I was like, "Peter?" It felt like I was in like an investigative journalist. I was like, I just wanted to pen a historical document, and now I'm diving deep. And then I'm now talking to like auxiliary guilds that are like, they know people, and and there was this group that were like, "Oh yeah, we know Peter, he's a cunt." And we're like, "Oh my god." And now they're telling me like real personal stuff. I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And at the end of that, and he's like, "I can't believe he's still around." And I'm like, "He's still here?" And I've like been hearing like he's this villain, this big villain. And I'm like, "Oh my god, I've got to find him." So then I find out what like guild he's a part of, and I go visit their guild camp. And he's not there, right? And I say this. So there were a couple people at the event who recognized me. There were 3 people who recognized me. And that was really crazy. I didn't expect to be recognized. And one of my fans, he was like, "Oh, I know where this guild base is. Let me take you to there." And I go to this area. And it's an area that has like 2 or 3 guilds. They share like an area. And I come on in. And I meet a guy. And he's like, "How are you?" He's like in a hammock. It feels like I'm meeting an NPC. He's in a hammock. He's got like 5 guys around him. He's like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "I'm Weasel." And he's like, "What are you doing?" And I explain the situation to him. And he goes, "Well, you've probably heard a lot of bad things about Peter, but I can tell you something positive about him. My name he's like, I am the original guild leader of
shit.
that, like from like 15 years ago. I'm like, holy fuck. And I sit down, I'm like, I got my little notebook that's like filled with information. I actually have it right here. Genuinely pages of writing in this little notebook. And I'm like, tell me. And as he's about to tell me, somebody else taps me on the shoulder and goes, oh, the person that you're with, like my fan, he's actually banned from this camp because he made people like uncomfortable, like last year or whatever. I don't know the details. So, and he's waiting outside for you, and we don't want him outside. So you're going to have to like escort him away. You're free to come back at any time, but you have to escort him away. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. He was just a fan of mine. I didn't really know. So I then have to escort my fan away because I don't know the situation there. I didn't want to know the situation there. So I had to escort him away. And when I came back, that guy was gone, and I never found him again. And that's the thing about Bicolline, is because you can't just fucking text someone. Yeah. Right? Yeah. You just have to go to their guild camp and be like, have you seen this guy? And he's like, maybe he's by the watering well. It's like, I don't know. And that's how messages like transfer. It's like you have a message for him, you have to go blah 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 blah. It's like old time where you spend the whole day looking for somebody, and that's like part of the adventure.
That's incredible.
And then eventually, the last people I interview were people who were part of that original guild that Militoon broke off from to get their perspective on why they betrayed their kingdom. And I'm getting all their point of view, and I was like, oh, this all makes sense, yada, yada, yada. They're like, yeah, we're way more prosperous now underneath the Empire, which is who they're part of now. Yeah. And they're like evil. It's like, we're prosperous now under the Empire. We were never prosperous underneath this other kingdom. And I was like, oh, interesting. And then I pen this historical document, and I go in to I perform it. It's essentially like a history in rhyme. So I perform it to all of the members of Militoon, and they all love it. I think I'm like one of them started tearing up. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a big deal. Yeah. And I then bring it to the archives, and I get there. It's like the day of the final battle, and I'm like, I've worked all week on this document. It's in like a scroll, and I've like used a quill to like pen it out. And I get there, and it's closed for the battle. And the old man from the earlier in the week walks by, and he goes, it's closed. I'm sorry. And I go, please, I've been working on this all week. And I show him the scroll. He looks down at his like pocket watch. And he goes, okay, I'll make an exception. And he opens the door, and like there's no lights out at all. We go inside, it's like dusty, he has a candle, and he's like, so what is this document? And I explain everything about it, and then I perform it. He goes, wow, well, that is something very unique. And let me, he accepts the document, he approves of the document, he puts it into his file, and he goes, and then this is for you. And he hands over the card of knowledge. And I'm like, oh my God. And I still have it. I still have it on me. I'm going to show it, and it's just like a laminated piece of cardboard. The card of knowledge is here in my hands.
There it is.
And I have it in my wallet because I need it for next time I go back, because obviously that was the last day. Yeah. And that grants you access to the library, which is needed for a lot of different things. But I got my card of knowledge. And that was like my own personal quest that I completed throughout that week. And it was just, I don't know, it felt incredible to just experience this like story that was real, but also like a little bit fictional because it's in universe, but these were real people and it affected like real lives. And whilst doing this, I met so many people. I had a list of all these different guilds I was talking to the point where like I would start talking to people, and they would go, I'd say, I'm Weasel, and they'd be like, oh, you're Weasel. Or they would see Militoon, and they would be like, this is the guild that Weasel is a part of. And I don't know, it was just genuinely such an amazing experience to do that.
It sounds incredible. That like personal quest to just like put together the history of your guild is so insane. It's so like it's something that like a fucking character from a book would do. It's incredible. It's amazing.
They have actual quests, right? So they have a quest board, and so people will put out quests for like for the in-game currency is called Solar, and so there'll be quests for Solar or resources or whatever. And I actually didn't end up doing any of them because I was doing my own stuff the whole time. But there would be like events and things going on. And there was so much. There's so much. And you genuinely can do whatever you want. Yeah. You could go there and have a good time and not fight in a single battle. You could, perform all of these things. And it's interesting because obviously as an English speaker, a lot of them speak French. So you can't, it's hard sometimes to talk to people. But to me, that added to the fantasy. Because to me, that was like, they're speaking Elvish. Like they're speaking... Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Like, that would very much put me in the mindset of like, I mean, like one of my favorite games of all time is Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is
right.
In like the Eastern Europe kind of thing. And just like that kind of setting of just like people with lots of mixed languages that maybe aren't all able to speak to each other, but they're like fighting the same armies, and I'm like, I wanna be in that setting for a week. Just take me there.
I got so invested in the world, like learning about the Empire and how evil the Empire was and stuff like that. They still had slaves and all of this stuff that like the first battle I was in, I was like, oh, this is fun. Like the third battle I'm in, I'm like, I care about winning this battle. I'm fighting for the king. And when I met the king of the kingdom that my guild was a part of, King Rattan, I think his name is, genuinely felt like I was meeting royalty. I know he's probably just some French dude who's like an accountant in real life, but he's there. He's not wearing a shirt. He's standing there, and I'm like, my king, it is an honor to meet you. And he's like, it is great to meet you. And I'm like, oh my god, the king is talking to me.
It's incredible.
And like his son, I don't know if it's real son or in-game son, but the prince, like Prince Felix, he's like on the battlefield in like this huge armor, like giving orders like a general. I'm like, this is crazy. Yeah. And you just feel like a small part of this bigger world, with so much like geopolitical intrigue and so much. I will say it's not for everybody.
No.
Because there is a distinct lack of modern comforts, right? So they do have just sort of tucked away like porta toilets that they sort of go out. So you do have, but they're relatively well maintained, but they, it's like going to a festival toilet, right? You're not going to have a normal toilet the whole week. And they do have showers in that same area as well, but again, it's that same sort of situation where it's not comfortable. You're sleeping in a tent in a cot, you have a sleeping bag, people are partying all through the night, so it's loud. I know at least 3 people who went home early because they couldn't handle how intense it all was. But for me, it was incredible. And there was just so many like small things. There was like this guy who had made like a dead body like in a thing, and he was just leaving it in random places to see what would happen. And I didn't know he had done that until the end. Yeah. So I found this fucking dead body leaned up against like the door, and I was like, oh my god.
That's hilarious.
Genuinely so good. I got so invested in my character, in the world and everything, that when I left and I realized that I had to go back to my regular life and that I wasn't Weasel and I was Daniel Rustage, genuinely cried. I genuinely was inconsolable. And it was such a weird feeling because it felt like there's like that scene in Rick and Morty where they like Morty puts on this headset. And he it's a video game where he lives this entire life as a guy. And he lives like 50 years as this guy. And then Rick takes the headset off him after he dies. He's like, wait, where's my husband? Where's my children? Where's my, And it felt like that to me. Like when I was going back home, I was like, oh shit, I have to get back to being a normal person. I'm not Weasel, the voice of Millertomb, monster slayer. I'm Daniel Rustage.
Yeah. You don't have any crazy titles anymore.
I don't.
Voice of Millertomb is such a fucking tough.
Isn't that crazy? Voice of Millertomb. Because it's 2 things. It's Voice of Millertomb because I was in the Bard contest. I did all the rapping stuff. Like I did, well, it wasn't rapping, it was like slam poetry. And so that was the idea, was that it was like a Bard role. but also because I was meeting so many guild leaders, I kind of became like a pseudo ambassador, because a lot of them didn't know that Militatum was like its own thing now, or like they didn't know they didn't know, and I almost served as like their first point of contact with them. A lot of these smaller guilds that are also maybe newer, so it kind of is like a 2-in-1 role in that regard. And next year, I'm hoping, if I do go back, to be more involved politically as well and do more stuff in that universe, because it's just, oh my days, so a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I really have just...
I remember you getting back and just being like, I don't know how I'm going to go back to normal life.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with my life. Like, I felt so purposelessness. Like, just incredible.
Just so intensely immersive.
And it was no stress. I didn't have to worry about, for me specifically, I knew that I didn't have to worry about like my next upload or by doing all of this. And, like I wasn't interacting with Twitter, or like, I wasn't losing 3 hours of a day to like short form content.
Yeah.
I wasn't like it boomer pilled me. I was not a slave to technology anymore. I spent like 2 hours laying in a field writing poetry, and here's the thing: is you could say, why don't you could just do that now? You could just go to the park and write poetry. But like my brain, I would do that, and then I'd just get distracted by like I would just end up on my phone deep dive researching about like something meaningless, which I still enjoy. But the ability to be ripped away from that and be immersed in this world, because being bored is such an important thing that we don't have anymore. This has become like a rant. Because
this is great. This is like a philosophy episode.
Yeah, because we don't allow ourselves to be bored anymore, because instead, the moment that we start to be like, I'm not entertained, it's like, I'm gonna put on a podcast. I'm gonna watch 50 TikToks. I'm gonna do, I'm doing all this stuff to keep my brain constantly entertained. But when you're bored and you don't have that, you actively seek out fulfillment and enjoyment in life. And that's what I felt like when I was at Bicolline, was I did this quest. I was doing all of this because I was going out and finding things to do, because if I just sat in my tent, there was nothing for me to do in my tent, right? Whilst and that's just, I feel like so important. It's so important, because then you feel more fulfilled because you're doing stuff. You spend, I don't know. And I know in hindsight, all the things I did was meaningless. Like I penned a historical document for a fictional world. Like I didn't actually achieve anything, but it felt like something to me. Yeah. And everybody I met there was so nice. Everybody was so kind. How are we already at 30 minutes?
Because it's a crazy story.
Sorry, Shwabadi fans. This episode was not for you.
Fans, this is not my episode.
This is not the Shwabadi episode.
I'm just here to nod and go, and then ask an occasional question.
I am sorry, Shwabadi.
One day I'll have a crazy life-changing experience, and then I'll talk about it on Hobby Hole. And you'll just have to listen to me yap. But I'm so happy to sit here and listen to it. One thing I'm curious about is when it comes to like the combat with like the larger scale
stuff,
right? The kingdoms against each other and whatnot. How much of that are you privy to as like a footman?
As a footman, not much, not at all, right? Because you're just told genuinely, you need to win this battle, Empire. And a lot of people don't want to be involved in that. They like to fight. They know that what they're doing is for the right reason, and then they want to party afterwards or whatever. But the more you get involved in your guild politically and stuff, you start to be like, this is really important. This is really cool. And there's just a lot of stuff like there's a guild general wanted to. I can't talk about this. Holy shit! Oh my god! Just in case. Wait, no, because genuinely I was told something, and it's like this crazy bit of like plan, and then we're like, you're not allowed to tell anybody about this plan, because the moment somebody else knows about this plan, it will ruin the plan. And I was just about to talk about it, and I forgot. There's a chance that somebody from the Empire listens to this and learns about this plan. And it's a multi...
Look back at the sentence you just said. There is a chance that someone from the Empire hears this and it ruins the plan.
And it's a multi-year plan, right? Like, it's invested. Right.
Yeah.
And so I can't... I can't talk about it. I'm sorry.
That shit runs deep, guys.
That shit runs deep. But
that's awesome. Because I think like the bigger picture stuff would be something I'd be really interested in getting involved in. Obviously not. You can't just get there and be like, I'm a politician. Let me in.
Yeah, you have to start.
Like, you'd work up the ranks in the guild, but like
getting involved.
It'd be something I'd be in the background interested in.
Yeah. Oh no, it's so incredible. So many groups of people just do their own thing. There's like these face ceremonies. There's like alcohol brewing competitions. There's stuff like this. There's this really fun area called the Dwarven Village, and it's this guy who used to be an architect who's like so passionate about just building funny buildings. Like that he wasn't allowed to do when he was an architect. So he just builds all of these, like, it's like a building where everything is slightly wrong, so it's all crooked and it makes you feel like it's a crazy fun house. He has a building which has a rotating library.
Oh wow.
So it's like a spire, and the top half of the spire goes out to like almost like a tower. It's a library and it rotates. And it's like an upside down ship building.
Magical world.
And you're like, and they crowned a new dwarven king, and we were there for that. We saw the ceremony, and they have poutine.
I guess that's one thing I was going to ask about. Is like,
the food is relatively modern.
Yeah, it's like going to be like modern food, whatever you buy it. I'm assuming in character still. And
so there's a mixture, right? So there is obviously an in-game currency and stuff like that for a lot of stuff, but they do also have stuff that you can buy with real world money. Shops there, and that stuff like food. There's two types of food places. There are the food places where it's like, this is for real world money. This is just a food truck that has a thing over it to make it look like it's a medieval building. But like, I can get a taco or a poutine. And then there are people who are doing like, they have their own like coffee shop, or they're selling their own food that they're doing in-game currency stuff because they're our character and they're selling food in character. And that stuff tends to be simpler, but it's still quite good. And they do have like in Newtown, which is where I was near, they had a lot of shops that were like, these were big medieval buildings. You go inside and they're selling like armor and weaponry and stuff, and that is for real world money. And it's because it's like this is a real company that makes these things. But it's great that stuff is there, because it's, if you get to Bicolline and you're like me and you don't really know what's going on and you're underprepared, you can pick up a lot of the stuff. Like, I got there and I realized, oh shit, I don't know what time it is. I have to buy a pocket watch. Oh no, I have to buy a water flask so I can have water. I have to buy a little like satchel for my currency, my solar and my stuff. And a helmet. I didn't have a helmet. I had to buy a helmet. And that stuff you sort of accumulate. And bro, it's good. They have these taverns.
The taverns interest me.
Yeah, so there's two.
Just go there and
there's
enjoy a pint of ale.
Yeah, there's a tavern in Newtown was the one I went to the most. The cider is really good, and they have a lot of competitions and stuff where they had the bard contest and stuff. And it's just this central location that's really nice. And then in Old Town, they have this huge tavern, which is like almost like mostly outside,
right?
And this huge gathering area where they have a whole bunch of the big things like the strongman competition and stuff like that. And it depends and then lots of guilds have their own taverns, like their own individual like oh, we're a guild and we've brought alcohol along, we've just got to set up a bar and people can come by and either drink for free or it's for solar or whatever. And it's nice. It's just nice. It's just a good time. I love it.
It's so much fun, dude.
I know.
It sounds incredible.
I know. Oh gosh, well,
I need to try. I need to try it. I have to.
Yeah.
And I know like LARPing and stuff, it is like there's a whole spectrum of like the really intense immersive stuff like that, and then there's just
like chill stuff. So that's obviously I've only talked about my experience at Bicolline for this LARPing episode. But there are other LARPs out there, and there are other big LARPs out there as well, and I'd like to try some others. I think it's going to be hard because I feel like I've just went so into the peak that like people do. There are LARPs that are like over the course of a weekend. There's LARPs that are just single day activities, or There are LARPs that aren't medieval themed. There was somebody there who was telling me about there's like this 1920s like horror themed LARP where it was
fun.
And the idea is if you die, you become a monster, and then you're a monster for the rest of the week or the rest of the weekend, like a zombie. And I don't know. There's a lot out there. I'm excited to try it all out.
Yeah. Oh, so many weird little things out there.
Yeah, it's so fun.
I hope we've opened people's eyes.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Or at least people are entertained. I'm sure there's going to be some Militoom people who are listening to this. So shout out Militoom. They were all super friendly to me. And actually, honestly, all of the people that I talked, I couldn't think of a single person that I talked to that I didn't enjoy talking to. I never got to meet Peter, this big bad evil villain guy. Never got to meet him. Never found out where he was or anything because I just ran out of time. But everybody I met was so nice. And yeah, it would take me ages to just endlessly list every guild member of Militoom, but people know that they're great. Everybody's great. And like the other guilds, like the TVN guilds, like Auto Survey and the March Wardens and Nova Vitae, those are the other ones that are part of that family. All of the people in there are really nice. What's quite funny is Auto is the one where they betrayed the kingdom to join the empire. But because a lot of people who were there are new, you talk to them and they go like, I didn't know that. Are we the baddies?
That's incredible.
That's great. And a lot of them are like real life, like fencers or archers or like they're like HEMA foam champions or whatever. And there was a decent, most of them are American or Canadian. There was like a handful of Australians, and not really many Europeans. Like I guess it's quite a distance, but I feel like Australia is further. But it is quite a distance. The only British guy, really, there were some people who was like, this guy's not British, but he lives in London, and there was another guy who was like, he's born in England, but he lives in America. But even the one British guy who had comfortably spent most of his life in England, he currently lives in Texas. So it's so it's like
the only one.
Yeah.
You're the only British person who travelled from England.
There probably were others, I just didn't meet them. I was trying to find them. I was worried at first that there would be somebody putting on like an English accent, like to get in character, and it would be awkward. But I don't think anybody really did.
Is there many people who do like voices?
Voices? Maybe. I mean, I didn't really. In battle, I sometimes would do I would sort of push the sort of, all right, sir, you put me wherever you want, sir. I'll go into battle, sir. Like, I'd do that.
Yeah.
But that was like, most people just talked normally. I think, no, there were a couple. There was somebody who was doing a Scottish accent. And I knew they were not Scottish. Oh, but I did meet 2 people from Belfast. Holy shit. I met 2 people from Northern Ireland. Shout out those 2. They were great. They'd also been to QCon, which is an anime convention that we have both been to, right? Yeah. So I was like, oh my God. And they were awesome. I was great talking to both of them. They left on Wednesday because it was all too much for them.
Oh.
They had this snorer in their tent that was like criminally loud. That's the thing. God. If you're in a tent with a snorer, you're just going to have to deal with it. But yeah, shout out them too. They were good. Yeah.
Shout out those guys. Shout out QCon.
Shout out QCon. Lots of incredible people I met and hung out with.
What a time.
Yeah, what a time.
What a fucking unbelievable time.
What a time. Wow. Okay. Well, that's it. I've been for fucking 40 minutes.
I hope everyone enjoyed the Rustage Bicolline episode.
Yeah. Rustage fans are eating. Shwabadi fans are suffering.
As they always are.
We've had some 50-50 episodes.
Yeah. I meant outside of Hobby Hall. I meant in general. Yeah. Anything
because you make bad music?
Yeah, that was the joke.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to add before we close out?
No, I think I'm good. I'm sure there'll be something I remember once I'm gone.
Then could you give us POV? You're charging in a battle. Can we hear a battle cry?
Oh, okay, yeah. We did have a battle cry. It went, oh God, I only know the second half.
Can we hear the second half then?
So it's like a call and response. Mm-hmm. And it's something, and then somebody says, for the South, and the one true herd! And then you charge, ah!